Hey guys, another great edition of Quarantine with Coaches. You can see I've made it back from Florida. I'm back in Whitewater. I'm going to miss the beach, but I'm glad to be back and getting after it with my fellow coaching staff. But nonetheless, we continue on with Quarantine with Coaches. Today I got a great guest. His name is Coach Roger Hughes. He's a head coach at Stetson University. Coach, how you doing?
I'm doing great.
We must have missed each other. I think, what is it, 65 North or something like that? You were headed out. I was headed in.
Yeah, I was on the plane on Allegiant, so maybe you had your mask on. I couldn't see it.
Awesome. How's everything going with you?
It's going good. We're in the process of. I'm still in football withdrawals because we did not get a spring practice. We're in the process of Zooming and adapting our recruiting to utilize the virtual rather than go out and actually see the kids. And we're not going to be able to have summer camps, it appears, this summer. So, we've had to do a lot more with the video and the virtual stuff. And then lastly, we're in the process of trying to figure out how we're going to come back and what that looked like and all the procedures that are going on with it and trying to anticipate any type of glitches, prior to getting here. Certainly our safety of our athletes and coaches are number one, and we want to try to maintain that.
One thing I wanted to talk to you about, your background was quite unique, I think. You spent some time in the Ivy League. You spent some time in the UFL, which maybe people forgot. That was, something that was around for a couple weeks back in 2010. And now you're at Stetson, right? And you just, I'll let you talk about it, but you sort of relaunched the football program there after 57 years. Can you just tell us a little bit about your path to Stetson?
Well, originally from Nebraska, and I mean small town Nebraska. My town's 1,100 people, and there's probably a couple horses and cows in that count. If you look at it, I graduated class of 46. Went to school I went to school on a basketball scholarship originally, and then coming from a small conference, I was one of the bigger guys at 6'2", and I get to college and 6'2" doesn't cut it down the forward and the paint, so, and I wasn't a good enough ball handler really to be a guard. And so all my friends were football players, and making a long story really short, I decided to play football, and I decided to do that. I played tight end, played at Doane for 2 years, and was actually a student coach at one time at Doane as well. And that's where I kind of got the football bug. So once I finished my undergrad, I was accepted into the master's program with the exercise phys department at the University of Nebraska. And I had the luxury of the close proximity of only being 25 miles away. I could literally go to class, drive down, and still be part of practice. At Doane is where I first started coaching football. After that, I completed my master's. I was actually accepted into the PhD program. And so I went actually out of the blue and just asked Coach Osborne for his advice. He had a doctorate in education. And, he kind of convinced me that if I really like coaching, I should stay in coaching, because I really enjoyed the research. I enjoyed the teaching, all that stuff. So he is the reason I finished my PhD. I mean, when other GAs didn't go to class, I was going to class, and he let me out to go to class and understood that I was working on, a more advanced degree than the other guys were doing. So once I finished my degree, I got married on August 12th and showed up to Whitewater, Wisconsin on August 14th for my first job. And so I was almost divorced in about 2 days because Bob Rezowitz was the head coach. Lance Leipold, who had a great run and still a very good friend, was kind of just coming out of playing, was kind of, I don't want to call him my GA because he was an assistant coach, but he and I worked together. And that's when I first met Lance, and certainly knew he had a very bright future if he wanted to stay in coaching. So that first year, my wife had never been away from home. And so I went off to work 7 o'clock Monday morning, and I come home, and we have no furniture. We have nothing. Okay, I have a waterbed that she bought for me. I have an entertainment center on a 19-inch TV that she bought for me. And so tears were running down her face. I want to go home. So I called Bob. I said, Bob, I need Thursday off. So we went over to Colders and in Milwaukee and picked up some furniture, which we had for a long time, all the way through my time at Dartmouth. And then we had a great run at Whitewater, learned a lot, and really owe a great portion to Bob Rezowitz and Lance, actually, with my experience there. Was there for 1 year, went down to Cameron University in Lawton, Oklahoma. My former head coach at Doane went down there. He had just won the national championship at NAI Division I they had at that time. So I left Whitewater after literally about 4 months and went to Cameron for 3 years. I did so well that they dropped football. I did a heck of a job down there. But I was lucky enough to get out, and I was accepted I was hired as the offensive coordinator at Dartmouth. And at Dartmouth, I was lucky and blessed to have a great quarterback named Jay Fiedler, who ended up playing 11 years in the league. And he was actually the first guy to follow Dan Marino at Miami. And everyone was booing him because he wasn't Dan Marino, but check it out. The last time they went to the playoffs was when Jay Fiedler was a quarterback. And he actually dislocated his shoulder and learned to hand off left-handed all the time to keep playing. So I went to Dartmouth for 9 years, the offensive coordinator. We had a great run there and won a couple Ivy championships there. Then was lucky enough to be hired as the head coach at Princeton for 10 years. Won an Ivy title there and really turned that program around and got it to the point where not only on the field, but off the field, got their endowment large enough to where it could be pretty much a self-sustaining program. I was fired from Princeton in 2009. And as you said, I was with the UFL, the United Football League, which was at that time going to be a farm system for the NFL. Because at that time, the NFL was talking about going to 18 games, and they knew they were going to need healthy bodies in November. So we played at the same time. I was with the Omaha team, the Omaha Nighthawks. And then what happened with the United Football League, it finally became the unreliable football league because we didn't already get our checks. The health benefits were cut off. But I really enjoyed coaching the pros and really felt like, I'd been in non-scholarship football, being at Whitewater in the Ivy League for 20 years. I really wanted something different. And so I was looking for an opportunity either in the NFL or at the highest FBS school. And Stetson called and they said, hey, listen, we're starting a program from scratch. It's a 1AA program in Florida. And we'd like you to come down and interview because we'd like to get a head coach who has been at a high academic school. And I don't know. I really don't know if I want to do this, but they convinced me to come down. And the president was brand new. And she had come from an all-girls school and had went to Cornell. So I'm thinking this thing's not going to be very good very fast. But she convinced me that she really wanted football to win. And really football has totally changed the school here. When I came, we had around 2,000 students. Now we're up around 3,150. And everything's kind of gotten taken off. So after 56 years, we brought football back. It's non-scholarship like the Ivy League, much like Whitewater. We do get financial aid. But it's a place where, we have unlimited talent here. I mean, everybody comes to Florida and recruits. And certainly we've got a number of kids right in our backyard. And frankly, a lot of kids we recruit all over the country. So a lot of kids want to come to Florida to play. And so my recruiting line, would you rather pack a snow shovel or a swimsuit? Tell me what you want to bring. And so we've been pretty good. I've been lucky enough to assemble a staff of really good coaches and really good people and good mentors and good teachers. And so here we go.
What was it about that opportunity at Stetson, the restarting of a football program that really intrigued you to move back across the country down to Florida?
Well, a chance to be a head coach because there's not that many head coaching jobs. A chance to be a Division I head coach. Again, understanding that Florida had a great talent. It wasn't like we're going to have to import people from all over the place. And frankly, when you go in to change a program, you spend about 2 to 3 years trying to change the culture into what you want. Where if you start from scratch, you start right with your own culture right to start with. And so you don't have to go through that transition. And having your name on something, having it kind of be your baby, so to speak, is kind of how I feel, really was intriguing to me. And then the president convinced me that she was going to do what it took to win, because football just needs, with the size and the volume, they need a different structure to be successful, from academic stuff to financial aid to a recruiting budget to being able to travel the appropriate way. And she convinced me that she was fully committed to make us a winner. And that's when I said, let's go.
What are some of the key components of your culture that you helped build there from scratch?
Well, Tim, it took me about 3 years. Our culture right now, I feel, is really pretty good. And the reason it's gotten to that point was because of a mistake I made coming in, because I underestimated the power of an upper class. Think about it. When you're with your football players, you only get 20 hours a week. They're with their compadres, so to speak, a heck of a lot longer than you are. And so who teaches them how to act in the dorms? Who teaches them how to act in the cafeteria? Who monitors them when they're out doing social things? And we didn't have that. We had all freshmen the very first week or the very first year. And I thought really that they would just develop their maturity, develop into leaders naturally. I didn't coach it. I didn't actually emphasize it. And everything was going just like it was supposed to. We were like 2-9 the first year. We were 5-6 the next year. And really the third year was ready to kick off. And so, as you know, Tim, when a team is player driven, when the leadership comes from the team, it's just so much better than coming from the coaches. And I really felt that our team was ready for that. And so I tried to turn that leadership over to them. And halfway through the year, captains weren't leading, captains weren't being followed, and we got pretty toxic. And we had a major meeting about halfway through the season, and it got pretty heated. And at that time, I figured out that I had to take the leadership back. And at that time, I said, I will never elect captains again. The team's not going to elect them, because many times, especially when they had no upper class to guide them, and we really didn't know their personalities through adversity, they end up picking the best player. The best player ends up being the de facto leader, whether they're leaders or not. And so I knew that I had to do something quickly, or we were going to lose the team totally. And so I was in the middle of recruiting. I like to read a lot of books on the plane. I pulled this book app called Extreme Ownership: How Navy SEALs Lead and Win. And based on that, and in talking with our women's basketball coach, who'd had great success here, she talked about one year she actually had captains apply for the job. And I thought, what a great idea. So that's what I started. They apply for the job. They have to do a resume. They have to do 2 letters of recommendation. They have to take a leadership class that I teach in the spring. And each spring, we take a different book that we look at that it focuses on leadership. And then they have to do a military promotions board, where I have a colonel come in from our ROTC. I have an administrator. I have myself and the strength coach and the director of football ops. And we ask them a battery of questions. Why do you want to be captain? How are you going to handle this situation? When do you think, give me an example of when things are elevated where you have to take it to the head coach. What are some things that you could handle as the leader? And then based on that, we chose our 4 to 6 captains, depending on what we have. But the interesting thing is, as the class started to develop, more and more kids wanted to get in. Like last year, we had 39 kids get into the class, and it meets at 7 o'clock in the morning, 2 days a week in the spring. And so that's a time when they don't have to get up early, but they have to. And so it gives me a chance to reinforce that culture all the time of what we're about. And really, we base everything on the Navy SEALs. And I would argue that that's why we've been able to go 7-4 last year, 8-2 the year before, and really turn this thing around and finish second in the conference 2 years ago, was because we changed how people were viewing us and how, frankly, we were viewing each other.
What is some advice you'd give to a young coach that is looking to try to emulate your career?
Well, it's so much different now than when I was a GA or going through it. I mean, first of all, there's so many more opportunities from a quality control than to a GA, than to an assistant coach. So I'll never forget. I was out working a camp at Stanford. Tyron Willingham was the head coach. Excuse me. And I had a dream about being a head coach. I've always wanted to be the head coach, and I did everything that I could, Tim, to prepare myself for it. But I saw my colleagues, every time they got a job, they were looking for the next one. And just all they were doing was working the phones with their connections and networking. And trust me, networking is important. But I took my time and tried to perfect the skills that I would need to be a successful head coach. So Coach Willingham liked to rollerblade. And so he had me rollerblading down the sidewalk, and I grabbed him and I said, Coach, when you get some time, I would love to just pick your brain. I need to ask a philosophical question. He stopped right there. Let's go right now. And I go, okay. I said, I watch my friends do this, but this is what I'm doing. And I'm preparing. I said, I don't know if I'm right or not. And he looked at me and he goes, do you think what you're doing is right? And I said, yeah, I think I do. I think preparing myself when I get that opportunity will mean that I won't squander it. He said, then I think you are too, but then you have to be prepared for the consequences of your decision. You may not move as quickly as other coaches, but you'll be more prepared once you get there. So today, if you look at an assistant coach, and I'm going by what I look at when I look at assistants, I look for 5 things when I look for players and coaches in this order all the time. Number 1 is character, because character determines if you're going to reach the potential that I have for you, either as a coach or a player. Number 2 is work ethic, goes without saying. Number 3 is ability to check your ego at the door. It's not about you, it's about the team. Okay. And when you see something that needs to be fixed, fix it, fix the problem. Then let's figure out whose responsibility it was. It's not looking to blame, fix the problem first. 4th thing I look for is the ability to be coached hard. We play a violent, passionate, physical, emotional game, and I'd love to tell you I never raised my voice. That would be a lie. Okay. And I don't call it yelling. I call it coaching with volume, just so you know. But for everyone talks about family. Okay. For me, family is I'm going to love you and spank you with the same intensity. And there's times you need a kick in the seat, and there's sometimes you need a hug, and I'm going to give you plenty of both. But let's go. Because think about it. Football is the only sport where you lose a game. Whitewater loses a game, they're not going to the playoffs. Baseball, if you win 2 out of 3, you got a shot. Basketball, you could lose every game and win your tournament at the end. And I'm not being disparaging. It's just different. That's why there's such a great sense of urgency with football. And there's very, very little room for tolerance for error. So again, you got to be coached hard, and you got to be taking that. And you got to understand that there's going to be times when there's confrontation. That's okay. That's how you get better. And then the fifth thing I look for is talent. And talent to me is the ability to play the position I tell you to play, or coach the position I tell you to coach. So as a young coach, I would try to find people that have been successful and try to figure out why they are, because there's a ton of different ways to do it. Then figure out the model that is yours and be yourself. I can remember, partway through my tenure at Princeton, we weren't doing very well. And I thought I would have to change. I have a certain way I treat people. I try to treat people with a lot of respect, and I care about their families. So I went down to actually visit Bob Stoops, because I heard he was the same way, just to see if it was all BS. And what I found was he absolutely runs around practicing the Gator with his kids, showing them. He takes them to school every day. He drives a minivan. He doesn't drive a Cadillac Escalade, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? So he gave me the courage to remain myself. And luckily, we had the best record in the 47 years at Princeton because of that. And so you got to be yourself. And then you have to network, because the win-loss record never goes by an assistant coach's name. It's always by the head coach. And so what do I have to go on to know that you're a good coach, Tim? Well, I'm going to get recommendations from people I know and trust. And so you've got to make sure as a young coach that you're building that network, but build it the right way. I see a lot of young coaches at the convention doing things that probably shouldn't be doing if they want to get a job. Every day is an interview. You never know who's watching. You never know who's going to get back to you. And you got to be smart about what you're doing, because the way you lead your life is becoming more and more important with all the social media. And, there's a camera every 5 feet. So you got to make sure that your brand, so to speak, is one that is impeccable from the standpoint of you have no things in your background that can come back to haunt you. But I still think, again, it's about treating people the right way. It's not a hard formula. Treat people like you want to be treated. That's kind of been my deal. And I know it sounds corny, but that's how it is.
That's awesome stuff, Coach. That's really good stuff. Appreciate it. Before I let you go, we do a little rapid fire here, and
okay.
just want to get to know you a little bit better here. So, what's the best thing about Nebraska?
Well, the Colorado president said I-80. Best thing coming out of Nebraska is I-80. I tell you what's the best part about Nebraska, and it's much like Wisconsin, the people. Because they care about each other. They take care of each other. They're truly friendly. I mean, Nebraska is the only place where the opponents get a standing ovation, at times. So it's the people here. And just like Wisconsin, very similar. Wisconsin people, trust me, I was at Safeway, 6:30 in the morning. The brats were on. The keg was tapped, and we're ready for the Packers, baby. I loved it.
That is a good way to describe it. What's the book that's had the biggest impact on you?
2 books, Extreme Ownership, as I talked to, and that was written by the commanding officer of Chris Kyle, the American Sniper, Jocko Willink. That's one. And then the other one would be Failing Forward by John Maxwell. He talks about, and it's an older book, but it talks about how so many people get so close to having success and they quit or they give up. And it talks about failure as being part of the process. Getting fired is not the end of the world. Okay, there's life after it. Learn from it and go on. As long as you learn from your mistakes, mistakes make you better.
Have you had a go-to quarantine meal?
Oh, my meal, fried chicken, potatoes and gravy, corn, baby. That's it. That's it. I'm down home country. My grandparents owned a ranch, and that's it.
That sounds like a good meal to me.
It is.
What's been your go-to quarantine TV series?
Ozark was pretty good, but my wife and I loved it so much we got it done in like 2 days.
Yeah.
The other one I just started was Vikings, which is not bad. And then trying to think, what was the other one I just finished up? Outer Banks.
Okay.
Outer Banks. More written for teenage age, but again, my wife and I liked it. And it's funny. I've spent more weekends at home this last 3 months than I have in 35 years of coaching. So It's good. We're still married. My wife and I still get along. It's great. But we've been able to do some things together, like kayaking. It's kind of cool to be kayaking and have a porpoise go right by you, or a dolphin go right by you, or the manatee. So we've been able to do some things like that.
That's awesome. Coach, I appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on Quarantine with Coaches.
Sure, Tim. My pleasure.